Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. All right, friends, I'm so excited for this episode. So a few months ago, you heard Colin's birth story on the podcast. You can scroll back and listen to that one if you missed it. It's episode 148. And I want to say too, I got so much kind feedback from you guys on that one of it impacting you, even some of you crying when you listen to it, helping you in your own pregnancy journey, hearing the ways God showed up when things did not go according to plan in that, in the story Colin's birth. So if you haven't listened to that one, I highly recommend it. It's fun, especially if you're someone who enjoys birth stories. It's definitely worth listening to. And now in this one, I want to pivot and share about my postpartum journey with you as a first-time mom. So I'm going to share about what those early days and weeks were like with a newborn and the things I've learned along the way to help you if you're expecting or if you're already in the postpartum period yourself right now, or if you're just thinking about like, how can I love on a new mom in my life? What is the experience like? I'm hoping this episode will help you. So I hear people say all the time, and I can totally relate to this already, of how easy it is to forget how hard things are early on when you have a baby. It's why we all keep having kids, right? And I will say I outlined the majority of this episode when Colin was just 3 months old, and I didn't record it then. So I outlined most of it. I actually revisited the outline this morning, and it was like 10 pages, and now it's a 14-page outline because I added to it. But I outlined most of it when he was 3 months old, and now I'm recording it when he's 5.5 months old. It'll probably air when he's closer to 6 months. And I waited a while to record it because I wanted it to be as helpful as possible. And I also need the time to really like process all of it, I guess. And I'm like, what exactly do I want to share? How can I make this helpful of like sharing my own experience while also giving tips? So anyway, this is like a compilation of like my immediate thoughts when he was like 3 months old. And then now like thoughts again 2.5 months later. So I'm going to focus though on those really early days, not so much life right now at 5.5 months old. So I hope this helps you in your own new motherhood journey, or I hope it helps you help a new mama friend. And I also want to acknowledge before I get into sharing that everyone's situation is so incredibly different. I am sharing from the lens of my own experience as a new mom, which might totally be different than your own postpartum journey or than the journey of your friend that you're hoping to support. So anyway, just want to acknowledge that. So let's dive in. I'm going to share parts of my own experience with tips throughout. And I must say, it is so hard to condense all of this. I think that's why I didn't record this yet when I had it all outlined and ready to go. Again, this is 14 pages I typed out. I can be long-winded and I have so many tips, so just know there might be a part 2 of this coming in the future where I might like just really focus only on some tips for you. But these are like a lot of my own journey with tips, initial thoughts throughout. We're just going to treat this real casual, like friends hanging out over coffee, because I'm sure I'm going to have even more stuff to share that is not even in this outline. So hope you enjoy, and let's just dive in. So I'm going to start with talking about right when we came home from the hospital. So first of all, oh my gosh, it feels crazy when you leave the hospital with your new baby. I remember Adam and I both feeling like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe we have a baby. We are taking home solo. They are letting us leave with this child. We know nothing is how it felt. And it felt really nerve-wracking that first car ride home because we had a lot of interstate to get to our house from the hospital. And it felt like everyone just stay away from our car. I remember I sat in the back seat with Colin, and while Adam drove, and we were just like kind of a nervous wreck. It felt so crazy bringing him into the house, getting him in the car seat for the first time, all of that. And it's so fun. It's so fun, exciting. You're exhausted. exhausted. And it just feels crazy, especially after having such a long labor, that moment of like finally getting to take your baby home. So to start though, I want to talk about those initial days right when you're home and everyone wants to come meet your baby and you're really exhausted because you just gave birth and you're also figuring out how to be a new mom, how to like do this new relationship with your spouse if you're married. It's a lot of adjustment. And so Adam and I, in preparation for knowing that it was going to be a big adjustment towards the end of pregnancy, thought really a long time, a lot of conversations about this, of like what we wanted those early days to be like when it came to friends and family visiting, especially family from out of town. Because again, like everyone wants to meet your baby. And then it's like, are you going to be hosting everyone? How long are people staying? How are you making it so that everyone gets to meet him? But then like not making someone wait too long, all that sort of thing. So here's my first tip though. Plan ahead for what you want family and friends visiting to look like postpartum and just have a game plan, communicate it right when the baby's born or beforehand, whatever makes sense. Because really you will not feel like figuring all out once your baby gets here. So thinking about it beforehand at the end of pregnancy is going to be awesome. And what you want might be completely different than what Adam and I wanted. But again, we talked about this a lot. We thought about with our family dynamics, what made sense. And we put a lot of thought into it during the end of pregnancy and we communicated it with our families prior to Colin's birth. And then obviously more so in those early days too with scheduling it. So for what we did, we had a postpartum doula for the first few days and they were not there 24/7. She kind of came and went for like a few hours here and there. I think it was like about 3 or 4 hours each day for like 3 days straight. And besides that, in those first few days, it was just me and Adam. And we wanted it that way because we were like, let's just kind of adjust. Let's just the three of us, me, Adam, and Colin, and this doula to help early on. And then we had my mom, Adam's mom, and then Adam's stepmom, all wanted to plan visits to come meet Colin. None of them live here, so it was all traveling and overnight visits with them. And so prior to Colin being born, we emailed everyone about our plan to start with a postpartum doula helping us and then inviting each of them for short visits, just like to quickly kind of come and meet Colin. And then after that, they all came back again for longer visits where they stayed and like helped for a few days and really got to like just hang at the house with us and stay at our house. And we also mentioned in that email ways that they could help us postpartum. And y'all, your friends and your family, I promise most of the time, I guess there are some exceptions to this, but most of the time they want to help you. Sometimes they just don't know how, especially if it's been a long time since they've had babies or if they've never had children themselves. They might be like, they don't even remember what's helpful in those early postpartum days. So in the email that we sent out to family, we put in it, here are some specific ways you can help us when you visit. And one of the birth courses we took, it was the My Essential Birth course. Stephanie is actually going to be on the podcast soon as part of one of the Motherhood compilation episodes. So she's the owner of My Essential Birth, and she's absolutely amazing. But in her birth course, there is a PDF download that's like ways to help basically like postpartum, and you like put it on your fridge is what she recommends. And so we attached that PDF to the email, and then we also put it on our fridge at home. And we like had that as like, here's ways you can help if you're curious. Like our birth course gave this to us, so it makes it a little bit like less intense, like saying our birth course told us to like give this to family and friends. And so we sent that to our family. And then we also did some things like we asked people to wash their hands before holding Colin, not to kiss him or get all up in his face, per our pediatrician's recommendation. So my tip with that is just ask for what you want and communicate it up front. I think email is the perfect way to do it since it's likely going to feel like you're sending a lot of information out. It's more than like in a text, like sending an email, telling people to text you with follow-ups. And some ways that we put in that PDF and in the email, like asking people to help, just to give you some ideas of what you could ask for help on. Here are the things we did. So we said help with laundry, bringing food or picking up food at a restaurant, helping prepare meals and coffee and all that, cleaning the kitchen, bathrooms, other parts of the house, getting the mail or taking out the trash, watching the baby while parents take a nap or do something else, and then picking up things from the store as needed. And those are all things worth putting on your list. Again, your family likely wants to help you, And some family members are going to be more helpful than others, which is just the way it is. That was definitely our experience, that some people were like, yes, I'm ready to like help. And some people were like, I just want to hang out with your baby. And you just got to be okay with that. But I think communicating it is helpful. I think it could feel annoying. I do not think it annoyed our family though. And for us, it was really helpful to have it all clearly stated. And that piece of paper being on the fridge was really helpful too, as like a reminder of like, hey, if you're looking for something to do, here are some things. So that was us. We had a postpartum doula come for a few hours a day for those first like few days, and then family coming in one after the other after that. And it did feel like a lot. Like there was always people in our house, but it also was nice that most of the time those people were also helping us, like, learn this new parenthood thing, helping us maybe sleep a little bit more, helping us not have to think about like preparing meals and things like that. So ask for help, be clear on what your expectations are, talk with your spouse ahead of time, like, okay, what's our plan for family visits, and like get all that figured out. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. Okay, so now I want to talk though about like some of the healing stuff in those early postpartum days, and it ties into the second tip I have for you guys. I don't want to share a lot of the details of this because like, I don't know, I'm not trying to share like all of the like nitty gritty body stuff here, but I will say in those first few days as a new mom and weeks and months, all of it, your body is going through a lot. And I actually did feel as a first time mom well prepared for some of those like early postpartum body changes and like what's going on with bleeding and things like that, because I did do a lot of reading, and the birth courses Adam and I took did cover postpartum. And so Adam was actually prepared for that too, and like what to expect in supporting me. That's a little random tip, guys. Like sometimes our husbands might not understand, like you might as the woman be like, yes, I know that there's giant diapers you wear and that like there's bleeding and things like that. And your husband might not. So kind of preparing him too for what to expect and how to help you ahead of time is helpful. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of discomfort sitting, more of a waddle than a walk. I had a lot of headaches, cramping and soreness. Your body just feels really tender. And I had, for me, a lot of pain for like weeks where the epidural was put in my back. So like a lot of lower back pain and aching. And then also on my arm and hand where I had the IV in, those areas were sore for just a super long time. And I actually had a bit of a bruise from the IV that took a while to heal. I had one day early on where I had after birth pains, which that's more common with second babies is my understanding. You can read about it online, but it's basically where you start to have contractions, sort of like you're in labor again. And that was interesting for me too, because I had back labor. If you listen to my birth story, I had back labor most of the time. But then when I had the after birth pains, it was like front labor, like in my stomach area. So that was interesting, but it's a lot of physical adjusting and also a lot of emotional adjusting. I was so up and down emotionally in those early days and many days after in those first months. But it was like in the early days, a lot of crying, both happy tears, some tears of exhaustion, some tears of like discouragement of like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Like, it felt so hard. Those early days were much harder than I thought they would be. I will say that there's so much joy, but it was much harder than I thought. So here's my second tip for you. And if you're loving on someone who just had a baby, listen to this too, as you think about them as a new parent, but go easy on yourself and be kind to yourself. That's my tip, which sounds really lame and basic, but let me explain, because I think it's so hard to like actually remember to do this when we are in it. But expect the emotional roller coaster. You might have shorter spans of patience with the people you love, like a shorter, what's the term for that? Like basically less patient with the people you love, and that's okay. So if you're a friend or a family member or spouse of a new mom, give her some grace, and maybe grace for a little while too, not just in those super early days, because the sleep deprivation thing might last for a while, depending on how her baby's sleeping. And that can cause a lot of like emotional upset. And then there's other things that come up, even like months and months postpartum. So just be really gracious. For me, I found myself really easily annoyed by people in the early days. Yeah, really easily annoyed. That's the best way to put it. And I was also just really a big ball of emotions, and I had to have grace with myself in that way. I had to remind myself over and over again that like right now, my responsibility is taking care of Colin and taking care of myself postpartum. That's it. Because it can feel a lot of pressure, especially as a business owner of like, oh, I need to post. Oh gosh, there's this past client right now, I'm on maternity leave, but they have this thing. Like, do I help with this? You can feel some pressure. You can be tugged all different ways, but just reminding myself my responsibility right now is my precious baby and taking care of myself. So no, it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve your birth experience if it wasn't what you hoped for. I talk about that in my birth story episode, but I had to have some like grieving of like, this was not the birth I expected, and that's okay. And then like figuring it out, like you and your baby are so both adjusting to each other. You're adjusting to being a parent, and this baby's adjusting to being alive outside of the womb. For me and Colin, we even had a few nights together in that witching hour time between like 3 and 7 p.m. where Adam was in night class and I was solo taking care of him in the early days, where me and Colin were both just crying together because I could not figure out how to calm him down. It felt like nothing was working. He was just upset and I didn't know what to do. And we're just both like, I'm holding him crying. It's like he's crying, I'm crying. And you figure it out over time. And I think back on those moments as like precious views of like, yeah, early motherhood is really hard. And adjusting to your baby and adjusting to it is really hard, but beautiful at the same time. So that's just a little tip there. Be easy on yourself emotionally and also go easy on your body. So for me, and I'll talk about this a little bit later because I am going to talk about working out postpartum. But for me, I healed pretty quickly postpartum because I did not tear badly. And even though I had a super long labor that was like over 40 hours, the pushing part of labor for me was less than 45 minutes. So it was like all that went a lot easier and I felt good more quickly than some women do, which I feel super blessed by. But my thought for you as a new mama, regardless of what your labor and birth experience were like, go easy on your body. If you do feel like you want to go walk outside or do something active and you're able to do it, but don't feel the pressure of like, you got to move around a lot. You got to work out immediately. You got to go out and do things or anything like that. I'm sure many of you have heard the little phrase, a week in the bed, a week around the bed, and then a week around the house. I think that's what it is. I might have just butchered that, but I felt like that was so necessary. Like I tried very much not to like overdo it and really listen to my body. And I think that helped me ultimately heal faster, to not like have pushed it so hard. And it was good for me emotionally to just, again, like focus on my baby and healing myself and like being really, really kind to myself, both like physically, mentally, and emotionally, all of it. So yeah, stay close to bed around your house. Let other people take care of you. Let someone else cook the food, make the coffee, take out the trash. And just if you're able to, and I know not everyone can do this, but if you are able to, just focus on healing and on being with your baby and ask other people for help as much as you can. And again, to all the people who are loving on new parents who are exhausted, I just want to say be gracious and be gracious for a while. A story for you. I had one point with my sister when Colin was 3.5 months old. So like not immediately postpartum at all. He was going through the 3 to 4 month sleep regression hard. Like that hit us hard for about 60 days where he had like, prior to this, we had gotten used to like, maybe he'd do like a 5 or 6 hour stretch every night of sleep. And so I had gotten used to that before feeding him for night feeds. But then at 3.5 months, he hit this sleep regression and it was really, really, really hard. I was up every 1 to 2 hours and it was like he only feeding him was what would help. Anyway, the 4-month sleep regression's hard. So I was exhausted. I was on edge and I said some really mean things to my sister in a text message. And I kind of took out my exhaustion on her without getting into the story. It was just like, I can't even remember what it was about, but like I was mad at her and I was like it was like I was madder than her than I should have been because I was so exhausted. And I did somewhat quickly apologize. When we ended up talking on the phone, I was like, I'm sorry. But she had the courtesy to know and say like, hey, I know you're really sleep deprived. I know you're going through a lot of changes right now and you probably did not mean all that you just said. I'm going to let it go and let's talk once you've had some rest. And it was like, I needed her to be gracious to me in that moment and say that versus being like mad at me for me being basically unreasonable. And she accepted my apology quickly, which I'm grateful for. But it was like sleep deprivation really is horrible and it can cause you to certainly not be your best self. It can cause you to have a shorter fuse. And that was true for me. Like I was more on edge. I felt like desperate for sleep during that time. It was like, oh Lord, if I could just get like a 3-hour stretch, it would change my life is how I felt because I was seriously sleeping so poorly, which is not the point of this episode. That's literally a whole nother topic. But yeah, I just want to say be gracious to yourself. And for people loving on new parents, be gracious towards them as they're adjusting to all of it. Okay, and my third tip for you, talk with your significant other about what your plan is for parenting together in that newborn stage and talk about it extensively. So you really do need a plan and you need to have expectations. I feel like I've talked about this multiple times in this episode. I also talk about it from a business perspective all the time, but you need to have a plan. You need to have expectations going into this new phase of life for who does what, and what you just are expecting things to be like. So for example, if you as a new mom are thinking, well, like my husband is now going to be responsible for cooking all the meals once the baby gets here. But then when you look at the situation, he's actually never cooked in your marriage normally. Then you need to talk about that ahead of time and maybe help him learn to cook some of your staple dishes. That's the kind of thing I mean here. So let me explain what our experience has been. So we knew in pregnancy that we both wanted to truly co-parent, meaning that we both were equally doing it all, dividing and conquering, but not where it's just like, because I'm the woman means I have to do all the baby stuff, which I know is like maybe more how sometimes it can be in more like traditional settings of like the mom does the baby stuff, the husband goes to work. And we have an interesting situation because my business is our primary source of income and has been for like 2 years now, really. So we don't have the whole situation right now where it's like husband works while mom does childcare alone thing. Adam is actually in graduate school right now to become a mental health counselor. And for a while of his schooling, he worked at the university that he's in school at. But then he quit that job right before Colin was born in preparation for Colin to be here so that he could be more hands-on and helping when I went back to work after my maternity leave, like I am right now as I'm recording this. So because of this, we both actually got to have like maternity and paternity leaves, which I'm so grateful for because Adam, like I said, he had just quit this job. So it was like he was in grad school, so he did have that responsibility. And I still have the responsibility of my business because that doesn't go away just because you're on maternity leave. But we did get to have like a lot of time, just me, him, and Colin at home, getting to know each other, adjusting, and really like doing the parenting thing together, which again, I am so grateful for because I know a lot of women and a lot of men, like you don't get that. You're at home all day with your baby while your spouse goes back to work immediately. And that could end up being how it is for us for future kids, but at least for with Colin, we both did get to have a ton of time just at home together for a few months, really. So Adam had during that time, and he still does right now, but he had early on night classes 2 nights a week and then class every other Saturday. But outside of that, he was able to be home with me. And then also outside of our real estate business stuff, because Adam is the one who runs that. So he would have to leave for plenty of times for things relating to that. But generally speaking, we both got to be home a lot, and we talk about this all the time, but we're always going to cherish those early days. And even the season we're in right now, where I'm back to work, but he's not working full time yet. He does have some counseling clients already, but he's not working full time. And he's in class still. But we're just going to cherish these moments that we got to both be at home with Colin and figuring out parenthood together so much in the early days. And to tell you a little bit, just while we're talking about it, of what life looks like right now, at 5.5 months of Colin being here with us, I am kind of back working as full-time as I can be right now, which is still less than 30 hours a week because I am also taking care of Colin. We don't have extra childcare. But what we do is me and Adam made a schedule where right now as I'm recording, today is a work day for me. And Adam is taking care of Colin outside of me breastfeeding him. And then I do pop in and take care of him when I want to hang with them. So for lunch or something. But Adam is primarily during the day taking care of Colin. And then at today, for example, at 3:00, Adam is going to leave to go for the 2 counseling sessions he has with clients tonight. And then I'll be with Colin until bedtime. So we have a lot of days that look like that. We have one full day where I'm taking care of Colin all day, but more often it's I'm working up until 3 or 4 or a half day, and while Adam's taking care of Colin. So we're truly splitting it so that we can both work, both take care of him, with a bigger emphasis on me working more because I have more stuff to do, I guess, in my work right now in this season. And it's been good. We've had so much fun learning the parenting thing together. I feel I've fallen in love with Adam all over again, watching him be a dad, because he is awesome at it. And he's it doesn't feel like I'm the one that knows everything and Adam's over here being the husband who doesn't know anything about babies. He knows just as much as me, and we truly are in it together and splitting stuff. But that's what I really like to kind of go back to the original tip. What I want to say with that is just having the proper expectations and both being on the same page with that is really helpful, of who's going to learn what, who's going to do what, and it hopefully not all just falling to you is really, really helpful. Yeah. So, okay, to keep talking though, again, I hope this episode feels fun so far. I know it's kind of a little bit all over the place. I'm hoping this feels like we're just sitting down chatting about postpartum stuff. I keep thinking of even more things that are not in my outline as I'm talking. But to keep telling you about the experience, newborn life is so hard. I know I said that. For me, when I think about the newborn phase, it will not be looked back on as my favorite phase so far with Colin. I think my favorite phase actually so far is literally right now, at 5.5 months, because he is just so fun. But newborn phase felt really hard. It was beautiful in so many ways, but really hard. And we had an easy go in some ways and a hard go in others. But seriously, nothing prepares you for how hard the sleep deprivation can be if you have a baby that doesn't like to sleep, which is how I would describe Colin, or how hard breastfeeding can be, all of it. And we did have, with breastfeeding particularly, I'll talk about that for a bit here, but we had a hard start to breastfeeding, and I feel amazed that it has even lasted as long as it has for us, because it really did feel like all odds were against us. I mean, I worked with multiple lactation consultants. We went to feeding therapy for Colin, so much stuff to help it happen. So if you listen to the birth story episode, you heard me share that Colin was born with a pretty severe tongue tie, lip tie, and an infant tooth. So a lot of mouth stuff happening. And in most cases, tongue ties make breastfeeding really hard, if not impossible, because the baby can't latch well and suck properly. So it's common, and I'm hearing now that I'm learned so much about tongue ties, to hear people say breastfeeding just didn't work out. And you don't really know why. It's it just didn't work out. No one figured out why, to later find out that baby had a tongue or lip tie that no one caught. until they got older. So for us, we knew Colin had those ties when we left the hospital because the lactation consultants at the place we gave birth caught it. And we didn't get it fixed immediately because it was pretty severe. So it needed like a special appointment with someone specialized, not just something they would do at the hospital or that our pediatrician would even do. So in those first days, from my perspective, I thought breastfeeding was going fine. I knew he had a tongue tie. I didn't really know what that was. Like, I'll figure that out later. And I'm not, whatever. I don't know what that is. I didn't realize there was a problem necessarily. I thought it was hard. It was painful a lot of the time, like most women share when it first starts, like when you first start breastfeeding. But I thought it was hard, but I didn't realize anything was wrong. So I was often nursing Colin for over an hour at a time, which is pretty normal for little babies. But in our case, he would still be really fussy after. He would still seem hungry, but I didn't really have anything to compare it to. So it felt a bit discouraging, but I'm like, I don't know. I can't really tell if anything's wrong. And something just to add in here. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize this prior to having a baby, even though I heard it so many times because we took the Take Care of Babies newborn class and like all of this different education around like taking care of babies. But I didn't realize that like, even though they say newborns are going to feed every 2 hours during the day or every 2 to 3 or 4 hours, like, people say different numbers, but you hear that, right? Literally until Colin was born and we were doing it, I thought it would be counted from the end of the feed, but it's counted from the beginning of the feed. So let's say you start feeding your baby at 9 a.m. and then they feed for an hour like Colin was in those early days. So they finish feeding at 10 a.m. Then you're actually due to feed again at 11 a.m. because it's 2 hours from 9 a.m. So basically it feels like you're always breastfeeding. Again, that was my experience. I know everyone's experience is completely different, but I felt like I was always breastfeeding. I had some big emotional moments with that of like, oh my gosh, I'm just kind of sick of this. I'm sick of always feeling like I'm having to get my boobs out to breastfeed. It was a lot. But our journey had some problems. Like I said, I thought everything was fine and normal though, because I had nothing to compare it to. But then we went to the pediatrician for that 2-week after birth visit. Colin had lost significant weight, like considered significant for his size. And at that point, at the 2-week visit, at least in our case, the pediatrician wanted our baby to have been back at birth weight or past birth weight because babies lose weight after delivery, but then they're supposed to gain it back through nursing. So Colin was not gaining weight. He was underweight. And it became clear in that appointment that we need to work with a lactation consultant. And we also at that appointment, like got info on someone to work with to get his tongue tie revised. And I won't get into the details of the tongue tie revision because that's like could be its whole episode, but it was really hard. It was hard how upset Colin was when it happened. I cried the whole appointment and like my contacts were so messed up after from all the crying. And then it was tough after because for an entire about month to a little over a month, we had to do what they teach you after the revision, but mouth stretches to him every 4 hours, including during the night to help it heal properly. So you're basically you put a gauze on your finger and you're putting your hand in his mouth and doing some different things to like help it heal and help it not reattach. And that was really hard. And Adam has been so amazing during the whole becoming new parents thing, but he was actually the one who did all the mouth stretches, which I'm so grateful for because my mama heart could literally just not do it. Like they taught both of us how to do the stretches at the follow-up appointment. They taught me how to do them again. And I just could not handle doing them. Because as soon as you do it, Colin starts crying. Like it was so painful for him. And he's like, why are you doing this to me? And so Adam was the one who handled that. Grateful for that. And Adam even went out of town within Colin's first month of life for a 2-night stay as he led high schoolers at Young Life Camp. So that was a big thing. And I was not alone with Colin during that time. My mother-in-law actually came to help, which I'm so grateful for her. That was an interesting time, just me and her for like a few days taking care of Colin together. And it went so well. But she did the mouth stretches when Adam went out of town. So I literally did not have to do them, which again, grateful for because it was hard seeing him get upset. And again, I think some of the upset with the mouth stretches wasn't necessarily that he was in pain, but more of like, it's really shocking what you're doing. But the tongue tie healed really well because we did the stretches so consistently. So we had that going on. And then we started working with a the lactation consultant and then another lactation consultant. We actually had 3 different people we worked with over the course of like Colin's first 3.5 months of life. But the first lactation consultant we worked with had me do something called triple feeding, which I had not heard of this. If you're already a mom, you probably have. But to put it like simply, it's basically where you breastfeed your baby and then you pump right after the feed. And then you're giving your baby that pumped milk in a bottle after to kind of help them bulk up, to basically get the milk out that they were not able to get themselves. And it can help boost your milk supply and also just make sure baby's being fed enough. And they're like, once you do triple feeding, you realize there's more efficient ways to do it. Like basically while I'm pumping, Adam would feed Colin the bottle of the milk I'd pumped the session before. So you get more efficient and learn some tricks there. But triple feeding was really hard. I did it for about 3 weeks, every single feed, including night feeds. So about like 8 to 12 times a day I was pumping. And gosh, my app I was using for tracking, we still use it now actually, but the Huckleberry app, I mean, it was telling me like my time spent pumping was so much. Like it was like all I was doing was pumping and breastfeeding, and it was really exhausting. And at first I felt a bit of determination with it. Like when I was told like, hey, we're going to triple feed. It's only going to be for about 3 weeks until we get Colin past birth weight. And then we get your milk supply up. And I like understood the task. My lactation consultant knew that I was a business owner and was like, think about it as a business goal. You're going to accomplish it. It's going to be hard, but worth it. We have this structure we're doing it in. And I was like, okay, I've got this. I'm going to do it. Only 3 weeks. It was really hard. I didn't feel like I got to hang out with Colin that much during those 3 weeks because newborns have such short awake windows. So I was often pumping during the time he was awake, that it was not breastfeeding because he was breastfeeding still for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then I was pumping. So it was like, I felt like all I was doing was feeding him basically, to sum it up. And so Colin did get his weight up and fast with the triple feeding. So it really worked. And then I did get to stop. It was longer than I was originally told it was going to be. So I still remember that lactation appointment where we did a weighted feed to like see how much he was getting. And then she kind of told me like, hey, you need to keep triple feeding, and actually referred me to another lactation consultant because she felt like she didn't know enough about tongue ties and it was time for us to get someone like even more specialized. And that was just so discouraging because I just felt like I want to be able to feed my baby. Nothing is working. I felt like I was failing him as a mom. It was a big emotional thing. And we also at that time were doing feeding therapy every week for, I can't remember when we stopped, but for quite a few months. And that was also to work on teaching Colin how to use his tongue well, both for feeding and just in life, because it can lead to future speech issues and things like that if you don't get the tongue stuff figured out right. And as I'm recording this now at 5.5 months, postpartum, at about 3 months. So we had stopped the triple feeding for a few weeks. I was told that I needed to do it again because breastfeeding was still not cutting it. He wasn't gaining weight. He went to a point where he gained weight rapidly and then he wasn't gaining weight like they wanted him to. Basically, I think I had a somewhat low milk supply is the best way I can think of figuring it out myself personally. But I decided for my own mental health to not do the triple feeding that time and instead to supplement with formula. And I am so glad I did. And it wasn't like our lactation consultant was like, you have to triple feed or that's the only option. She did say like, you could, if you don't want to do that, if you don't feel like that's right for you guys this time, you could start just supplementing with some formula. And I'm really glad that again, for my own mental health, I decided to do it that way because triple feeding really was so hard and so exhausting. And I did not want to be like signing up to kind of do it indefinitely again, which is kind of how it turned into being the first time. That was like 25 days of it. So it felt emotional at first to start formula, if I'm being honest. And again, like this is my experience. I know everyone is so different. Some women are like, I'm ready to just start with formula from the beginning. And I think that's awesome. But for me, it felt emotional starting with it. I felt like I had failed somehow because I knew like it was because my milk supply was low combined with his tongue tie stuff. And I was like, I felt bad that it was not working for me to breastfeed. And I felt bad in a sense that I was like choosing not to triple feed when I could have done it that way. But again, I really do, especially looking back now months later, I'm like, that was the right decision for us. And that first bottle of formula, it's so funny. I was thinking like, is he even going to like like this. Like, it's going to be so different. He literally just whipped it down and could not even tell a difference from pumped breast milk, at least from like how he looked drinking it. It was like, yes, I enjoy this. It's just the same. So for a few weeks, we did top offs with the bottle after every breastfeed, similar to like the triple feeding model. It was just formula, not breast milk. And then our pediatrician told us to stop because he had gained up enough. And so now for about a month and a half since then, I've been just breastfeeding. And then we do a bottle of formula as part of his bedtime routine. Or if I'm working in a meeting, and like Colin wakes up from his nap and needs a feed while Adam's taking care of him, Adam will give him formula in a bottle, and then I'll just pump later and we'll freeze it or give it to him later. It's worked really great for us. And I'm really grateful I made that decision. I'm grateful formula is a thing. Like, praise God that we have different options when breastfeeding doesn't work or when we don't want to breastfeed. And I've really feel like for us, like the whole combination feeding thing has been so amazing. Like when I was pregnant and thinking about breastfeeding, like learning about it, I kind of thought it was like all or nothing. Like you're either breastfeeding or you're formula feeding or you're exclusively pumping. I didn't really realize how much room there is for actually all three, for like pumping sometimes and giving breast milk in a bottle and breastfeeding and doing formula. Like you can do it all and create the perfect like setup for your family and your baby. And again, like it took me a while to get there, but I'm so glad that's what we're doing. And if you're curious about formula and formula brands, I'll go ahead and just share what we use. So we use Bobby. I will link to that website in the show notes, but I really like them and their branding and their mission and what they're putting in the formula, all of that. I did a lot of research before picking a formula, and that's when we use, and I really like it and trust them a lot as a company. Okay, so I'm going to move on from all the breastfeeding conversation. Again, I could do like an entire episode on all that. So I was giving truly like the cliff notes of tips and also the cliff notes of my own experience. And so I hope you'll have grace for me if anything I said came off differently than I might have meant it. Because again, I know it's like feeding babies is such a sensitive topic. I know that now as a mother. I did not get that when I was before becoming a mom, but it is like, it's a sensitive topic. I hope everything I said like comes across well. And if you have questions, message me. I'm happy to talk more about it or tell you anything else I learned from that experience. Okay, so going to move on from that topic. My tip number 5, I want to just share. Oh my gosh, I feel like I needed to hear this so much in the early days. And it sometimes doesn't feel true, but it is. It all gets easier. You get more confident. And I feel like for me, every day and every week, it was like something got easier and something also got harder. So it's like one area would get a little easier and I'd be like, okay, I figured this out. Like for feeding, it's like maybe I figured this out right now. And then something else gets harder. It kind of goes back and forth, but it does get easier. So hear me on this. If you're in those first months, especially, listen to this. You will not be up every 1 to 3 hours a night feeding your baby forever. Breastfeeding will not always take an hour. It will get shorter. Your baby will not always struggle to latch or refuse the bottle or whatever else you're experiencing in your feeding journey. Your baby won't always need to nap held in your arms. If that's your situation right now, that was ours for a lot of naps. Your baby will not always fuss nonstop during the witching hour or have like tummy problems upsetting them. You won't always be afraid of taking care of your baby solo or afraid of those car rides and all of that sort of thing. For me, like in all honesty, those first times alone with Colin for extended period of times while Adam was in night class were legit scary to me. Like when I was left with him for like 5 hours straight, I was like, I don't know if I feel confident enough taking care of him alone. I wish I had another set of hands here. It's okay that you don't feel confident yet. You and your baby are still adjusting to so much. And like your baby's, adjusting to the world, but you're also adjusting to parenthood, whether you're a first time parent or not, like you're adjusting to this baby and this baby's particular needs. So just know it gets easier though. Because again, I had so many moments where I was like, am I ever going to like be able to do this thing again that I'm used to doing every day? Am I ever going to wake up again without my baby being my alarm clock? That sort of thing. So even though your life has forever changed as a parent, even just in like a few months, things will get easier. You'll develop rhythms and you'll get used to like taking care of your baby and their needs. So for example, in those early days, I seriously felt, I still remember so vividly, so many times feeling like, will I ever just get to watch TV alone again? again before I go to bed? Or will I always feel like I don't have time and I'm taking care of Colin, or I'm going to sacrifice sleep if I choose watching TV or hanging out with someone? When will I get to leave the house for more than an hour without needing to feed Colin? Will Adam and I ever get to hang out alone again or go out on a real date? All of those things happen in time, and just remember everything's a season. So embrace the season you're in and know that the way your baby is right now, the way you feel right now is not going to last forever. And for me, the sleep thing in all those examples I just shared was the biggest, because I had so many moments where I felt like I will never sleep again. And just, I would dream of like, especially in that 3 to 4 month sleep regression, like if I could just get like a 5-hour stretch of sleep, it would absolutely change my life, because like the most I was getting was like 3, maybe 4 most of the time, like 1 to 2 hour stretches of sleep. And it's hard. I also felt like at times our days will never stop revolving around trying to get Colin to nap, because Colin's a baby that I always describe, looking back at those early days, a baby that did not like to sleep. But it does get easier and better, the sleep, the feeding, all of it. And every baby is so different. I feel so curious about what it will be like with future kids, of like, because again, every baby's so different. Like Colin, this baby, I would describe as like, he was really hard to get to sleep. Now he's sleeping great, because I think we like laid a really good sleep foundation for him in trying to get him to sleep well. But he was a baby that was hard to sleep. And then you hear about some babies though, who are like sleeping through the night really early on. But for us, our experience today at 5.5 months old, Colin literally like 2 weeks ago just started doing like a 10 to 12 hour stretch of sleep straight without night feeds. We did do sleep training, but not really. It's kind of confusing. Me and Adam have said, like, if people ask us if we did sleep training, it's like, do we say yes or no? Because we took the Taking Care of Babies ABCs of Sleep course. Like I consumed the whole thing, printed out all the stuff. I really enjoyed the course and learned a lot. And I was like ready for sleep training to be hard. And like, we're going to do this and Colin's going to start sleeping after. And then like our first night of it, it was like he just adjusted so well. So it was like mostly tear free. And it felt like we didn't even really have to do most of the stuff we learned in the course, because he was just like ready to go. He was like, all right, we're going to wean off night feeds. Like I'm ready for it. And he started sleeping really well. So I feel super blessed by that. But I think a lot of it was like, we waited till he was ready. And we had laid really good sleep foundations from what we had learned actually we did all the Taking Care of Baby stuff. So we did her newborn class and her 3 to 4 month ebook. And we were doing all that stuff this whole time. So it was like, he was ready when the time came for sleep training. But yeah, so like now at 5.5 months old, when like literally even just a month and a half ago, I was like, oh my gosh, will I ever sleep again? Now I am sleeping and it's amazing. I will never not be grateful for sleep again. Now that I'm getting sleep, I'm like, I know what it's like to like not sleep. And I know we'll have seasons again with more sleep regressions where that might change. But I'm very grateful for sleep now. And now for us with naps, it's easy overall, not every time, but easier. Like he naps easily in his crib. He puts himself to sleep, all of that kind of stuff. But there were many times where Adam and I felt like our whole days were like getting Colin to sleep, holding him for entire naps. And then like he wakes up at 20 minutes, then we're trying to extend the nap and all of that kind of stuff that parents do. And now just looking back, I want to tell myself then, like, it does get easier. This won't be forever, but right now your baby needs you and what you're doing is so important, even when it feels mundane and tiring, and like actually working at your 9 to 5 or in your business would be so much easier than like making this nap happen. Because that really is how it feels. The work you're doing is so important, and it just does get easier. That's just what I want to say. It gets easier. You get more used to it, and it won't always be as hard as it is in that newborn phase. Okay, now let's talk about exercising postpartum. So for me, at least, again, everyone's experience is so different, but by about 3 weeks postpartum, I felt good enough to go on like some very short walks outside around the neighborhood. Colin was born at a time of year where the weather was fall and getting really nice here in Tennessee. And so I really enjoyed going on some short walks with Colin in the stroller or wearing him in our Solly wrap around the neighborhood. And so I felt good enough to do that by about 3 weeks. Again, not for super long walks, but just something short. And I was also more active around the house by 3 weeks. And then by 6 weeks, basically on the dot, I felt ready to do actual workouts again. And I did try to ease back into exercising, but I did not feel like I needed a ton of easing. So my body definitely felt different and felt weird, but I felt good doing squats. I even felt good doing things like burpees and jumping jacks. That's not to say that those things were not hard or that I felt totally normal, because I didn't, but I wasn't in pain or anything. And it felt like, okay, yeah, this is hard. I haven't done a burpee in a while, but I feel good doing it. So I was really eager and excited and ready to work out again at that 6-week point. My midwife approved me for exercise again. She said I was healing really well. A little tip for you, I also had her check my abs for abdominal separation. I think my understanding is that most doctors and midwives don't necessarily check for you. You have to ask. They just will approve you typically for exercise again based on how you say you're feeling. So I would say ask them to check your abs too, to help you like safely go back into exercise. And I did not have any separation still. So like I was good there. So immediately at that 6-week point, I was like, I'm ready. I'm excited to work out. I'm ready to work out like every day. I'm going to do this. I'm so excited. And at that point, Colin was sleeping a little better. So I knew I could count on like a 4 or 5 hour stretch of sleep before I got up to feed him. So I was less tired than I was in those early days. Again, his sleep regressed again when he went through that sleep regression, but it had started to get better at this point. So at that point, I was working out maybe a few times a week. I would work out in our bonus room with my yoga mat and some free weights, just doing random stuff. When I did it just for like, again, like 15 to 30 minutes, maybe, typically when Colin was napping. But then when sleep got hard again, and when I started working more again, exercising became so hard. Really, it was like his sleep regression kind of started around the time that I was starting to prep for Black Friday. And I stopped exercising as much because I was so tired from both working again and from the lack of sleep. And so it's been really back and forth, like this whole journey for me of exercising again. Like I've said 1,000 times now, I'm 5.5 months postpartum right now. And it's like a win for me at this point in the past month if I can work out like once a week. And I am going on walks with Colin more often than that, but like actually going to a gym and working out has just felt so hard because I'm struggling to prioritize it now that I'm back to work. Because when I'm not with Colin, my feeling will be like, oh, I should be working, or doing something else like hanging out with a friend or something around the house, like doing laundry or dishes or making dinner or whatever. I feel like that's the things I should be doing. And then when I'm working, I have a lot of stuff to do in my business. So it's felt hard to prioritize, which is not an excuse. I want to get back into prioritizing it. And I've also gotten out of the habit though. Like for me, during pregnancy and definitely more so even before I got pregnant, I had like a habit of exercise to where like my body would miss it if I didn't work out. And now that I've gotten out of that habit, I'm like used to working out less. So I desire to get back into it. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not working out much. I'm being patient with myself as I'm like getting used to working again in my business. And I'm still breastfeeding and I'm sleeping more now, which I have more energy. So hoping to be able to get back into working out a bit. One tip for you too, just a random thing. If you are in a time of year and a location where you can go on walks for your baby's naps, do it. It is so fun. That's something I'm going to look back on in those early postpartum days with so much fondness. But for us, it was like about 2.5 months old that we discovered this, but we realized that Colin would nap really well in the Solly wrap. It's like a baby wearing wrap that we got at one of our showers. And I never really used it much early on because I didn't realize how well it worked for us. But basically we'd started with stroller walks and we'd try to get him to nap sometimes that way, but he would never nap in his stroller. So we kind of realized, okay, we're just going to do stroller walks for his awake time, which meant really short walks. But then once I started wearing him in the Solly wrap for walks, he would fall asleep. And so Adam and I got in the habit of walking daily, oftentimes for 45 minutes to 2 hours, even a few times, which was so long. But we'd walk while I wore Colin, talk about a workout, especially those days where it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours long. Because I'm trying to like walk for the entire nap, got to keep moving to keep him sleeping. So I got some great exercise in at that point that way and would feel really exhausted after those walks. but I loved it so much. And I will very much cherish those moments, like the long walks with Adam while Colin slept. And we talked about our future and dream up fun things. We had a coffee shop nearby our old house that we would actually walk to and then go grab drinks all while Colin was sleeping and then walk around with our coffees. It was really fun. I also did a lot of long walks with my mother-in-law when she would come to help, doing that same thing where we'd go get coffees and we'd walk while Colin slept. And it was so fun. So wear your babies for naps if you can. It's the best. I loved having him like so snug and close to me, like it was when I was pregnant, sort of. And then also getting some exercise in and getting out and about while he was sleeping was really nice. He got to a point where he wouldn't sleep comfortably like that anymore. So I'm glad we did that while we could. So I'm all about baby wearing for naps. And with exercise, just take it day by day. Do what you have energy for, what will bring you joy that day. Some days you just want to lay on the couch with the TV show to relax. Other days you might want to work a little or read or cook even or nap. And then some days exercising might sound like it's what's most fulfilling for you. Another random thing, buy yourself some new clothes for postpartum, and I would say keep wearing your pregnancy clothes for a while there. There's no shame in keeping the pregnancy clothes. So for me, for about the first month, I transitioned out of pregnancy tops, but I was wearing my pregnancy jeans and shorts still. Definitely was wearing my pregnancy leggings because I just felt most comfortable. And then when I bought some new athletic shorts, I actually was Adam got me as a push present, a gift card to Lululemon, and I went and bought some new shorts. And I bought a size up than what I was used to. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a bigger size, something that's going to feel more comfortable to me in this season. And I would also say treat yourself to some tops that are breastfeeding friendly. Oh my gosh, I quickly realized that I had nothing that buttoned up and down and worked well for breastfeeding in terms of shirts. At first I thought I'll just breastfeed in t-shirts and stuff. But at least for me, what made the most sense was button up tops. So I got some pajamas, casual shirts and dress shirts that I could wear for that purpose. And that was such a game changer, and so much great stuff on Amazon. I can link to a few things I really liked myself on Amazon in particular in the show notes. I got 2 pajamas that were really kind of silky material, really comfortable, that buttoned up and down all the way and were cute. So you feel cute in them. And got plenty of casual shirts on Amazon that were breastfeeding friendly that I would just wear around the house. And often you're in those early days, you're having wardrobe changes multiple times a day because your baby's spitting up on you. So you're going to need multiple outfit options. And then when I did my Black Friday shopping last year, I bought a bunch of things from Pink Lily, which is one of my favorite online boutiques. And I got a lot of stuff from them that's breastfeeding friendly. And when I did my Black Friday shopping, I made a rule for myself that I'm only going to buy breastfeeding friendly shirts because I didn't really have any that weren't at this point that weren't super casual. So I wanted to opt for some nicer things, but that I was okay getting a little dirty, that were going to be breastfeeding friendly. So for the early days, you want some great casual looks for around the house that are going to be breastfeeding friendly. And then later on, maybe some nicer things that have a bit of a more going out vibe, but that also make breastfeeding easy for you. Okay, and now I have a few more things before we close. Again, this episode's felt a little all over the place, but I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope you're getting some good thoughts and tips as you adjust to new motherhood. So I have a few things I want to share. It's just a kind of bunch of tips in one about helping your mental health in those early days. These are things that really helped me. So one thing, everyone says this one, but going outside every day if you can, doesn't have to be a walk or anything big. It can just be going to get the mail or sitting on your front steps and bring your baby with you or not, either way, but getting some sunlight. Because in those early days, you're not leaving the house much. It took me a while to leave the house besides going to appointments with Colin. The first time I left the house for something outside of that, it felt so crazy and significant. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm leaving the house. Especially the first time leaving the house without your baby feels really crazy. But you're not leaving the house much. So it can feel really lonely and maybe even depressing in some ways, being cooped up in the house all day. So getting outside and getting some sunlight is really helpful. Also showering is helpful. It can feel easy to get out of the habit of that and get out of the habit of maybe getting ready a little bit. That really helped me was not every day, but every few days I would actually put on makeup, and that made me feel more like myself. Again, not every day, but it was something that helped me. Okay, this one's really big though. Adam and I got in a good habit of this, and this was Adam's idea. And I was like, yes, I'm glad we're doing this. So set a few goals, like literally 1, 2, 3 a day of things that you want to do for yourself, and tell them to your spouse or other people who are helping you with your baby. So it might be that you're like, today I want to shower. Today I want to spend time reading a book, or I want to spend time with Jesus in quiet time. You want to have a latte from Starbucks. You want to hang out with a friend that's coming over, or you want to just go on a drive even to get out of your house for a minute, or go on a walk, or go to the gym, whatever it is. So Adam really helped me with this, because for me, every day I was really bad about like thinking about what I wanted to do. I was more just kind of like following Colin's schedule, and I was like, oh, whatever I'll have time for, I'll do, with no real plan. But you really need to know what you want to do before it's time to do it, especially if you're trying to do something during naps, because it's like, all right, baby's asleep. I only have like this much time until they're awake again. So you want to like make the plan for the thing you want to do for yourself during that time. So basically in the morning, Adam and I would both ask each other, and we still kind of do this a little bit, even though we're out of this season, but we'd both ask each other, what do we want to do that day for ourselves? And we'd help the other person do that thing. So I told Adam, like, okay, today the thing I want to do is I want to do a quiet time, and then I want to get 30 minutes of work in. Then he would kind of help me be like, okay, during this, I'm going to handle this wake window. You go do a quiet time. And then for him, maybe it's like he wants to go to the gym, and be like, okay, during this nap, I'm going to, extend if Colin wakes up too early. You go to the gym. Just helping each other with that. But it helps you feel more sane, I think. It helps you prioritize yourself too a little bit in a season where it's hard to, if you're like setting up, like, these are things I'm hoping to do today. And again, just like 1 to 3 things will make a huge difference for you. Next little mental health tip, have friends come to you to hang out. It really is hard to leave the house for long periods early on, especially if you're breastfeeding, or if you're the person taking care of your baby solo. And it's also hard to set a time for plans, because your little baby's not likely on any sort of schedule, and you don't know when they'll wake or when they'll need to eat or sleep and all of that. So for me, it was really helpful having friends come over to hang out, and then having friends who are willing to be a little flexible on the time until more like 30 minutes before. So like, let's say I'm going on a walk with a friend while I wear Colin for a nap. We may have like made an ETA time for when we're going to hang out. But then it's like when he wakes up from his nap and I'm feeding him, then I text the friend and say like, hey, this is the time I think works. And then we go walk. And that's really, really helpful. Maybe you have a friend who's coming to hang out while your baby's awake and help you take care of them. Then you text them and say like, hey, baby just woke up, come over whenever. Baby's probably about to wake up from their nap soon. That sort of thing. And you likely will have people offering to bring you something or help in some way when they come. If they do that, like, say yes. Again, people, I said this early in the episode, people really do want to help. Sometimes they just don't know how. Sometimes you have to kind of tell them. But for me, I feel really grateful that I had friends offering to come help in various ways, or offering to bring a coffee or whatever else. It really does take a village. And on that note of having friends and family help you, have a meal train set up for that like first month or so. There's a website, I will link to it, that helps you do the meal train where everyone can like sign up easily. You can put restaurants you really enjoy or any food allergies and things like that. And people pick a date and then they sign up for it. They tell you what they're bringing and they bring the food and text with you to coordinate. And then they also get to meet your baby, which kind of is nice because they're bringing you a meal and then you're getting to like show your friend or family member like, hey, here's my new baby. You're getting to meet them, which is really fun. But yeah, the meal train was a game changer for us early on. Ask a friend to set one up for you if you don't have one already set up. Super, super amazing. And also another thing that was a game changer for us was meal prepping tons of freezer meals. In the 3rd trimester, my mother-in-law and I actually just spent like 2 days straight. It was so fun, literally right before Colin was born. And we just worked in the kitchen and made a bunch of freezer meals, both like breakfasty freezer meals and stuff that would work for lunch or dinner. I found that for me, I used the breakfast meals like immediately because no one's bringing you breakfast stuff on a meal train. And then once our meal train stopped was when we started like thawing out some of those freezer meals we did that were more like dinner heavy. I plan need to do a whole blog post of like my favorite stuff we did freezer meal wise during postpartum, because I got really into freezer meals basically from this time of those early days with Colin. Now I'm just like, I do freezer meals all the time because I just love it and find it so efficient. And it's like you make it once, then you can make double and whatnot and have it for multiple meals later. But yeah, freezer meals were huge. Meal train was huge. A great way to get help and like let people help you in those early days. So this was a really long episode, longer than I've recorded in quite a while. I hope you enjoyed this though. I hope this had some tips that will help you in your postpartum journey. And again, I plan to do more. I have more stuff I could share with this. I'm kind of limiting myself here, but I'd love to do an episode eventually about meals postpartum. Like I said, the freezer meal stuff and just some other things as well about like going back to work and things like that. So let me know if you think you'd like to hear those types of episodes. And to close, I want to read a poem. It's from the poetry book, All I See Is You by Jess Ehrlichs. I would highly recommend getting this poetry book. It was one of my favorite things to read in those early days. I would read it while breastfeeding. And then sometimes I would also read it to Colin, like during his awake time when it's like, okay, we're reading Bookstar Baby. I would just read him these poems and really be like reading them to myself as I did that. But such a beautiful book about just like the early days of motherhood is kind of like the emphasis of this poetry book. And Jess is awesome. I love following her on Instagram. She shares such beautiful things. So I'm going to link to this where you can read it online. And I'll also link to the book in the show notes. But I'm going to read this poem and I hope it blesses you as a new mom. And seriously, it's so beautiful. I cried the first time I read this so much. And I've cried a bunch of times since. So here it is. It says, Mama, I can't see past you right now. I'm so small and everything's a little blurry. All I see is you. When you feel alone, like the walls are closing in, remember I'm here too. I know your world has changed and the days feel a little lonely, but they aren't lonely for me. You are my everything. When you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you're making it look easy to me. Even though we're still getting to know each other, you know me better than anyone. I trust you. When you think some nights you'll never sleep again, you will. We both will. But I'm scared right now. I promise I'm not manipulating you. I just need your smell and comfort. Do you feel that tug in your heart when we're apart? I do too. I miss you. When you feel as if you've achieved nothing, please know my cup has never been so full. The days that get away on you will be some of my best memories of us playing together on the ground. I love you. When you feel like you don't know who you are anymore, when you turn away from the mirror, that face will be the one I look to when I achieve something, the one I search for in a crowd, the reason for my first smile. You're perfect to me. When you feel like the weight of it all is heavy in your heart, please know I've never felt lighter. Can I lay here with you a little longer? I won't always need you like this, but I need you right now. When you feel as if you have nothing left to give, when I see your hands outstretched at me pleading, when we're both crying, I wish I could talk, but I can't. If I could, I would tell you there's a reason I chose you. I can't see past you right now, Mama, because you are my world. It will get bigger soon enough, but for now, all I see is you. Ugh. I love that poem so much. And as you can tell, obviously that's supposed to be like from the perspective of our baby talking to us. And I just think that's so beautiful. So highly recommend picking up her book. I will link to it on Amazon. But yeah, that's it, guys. Again, I could talk longer. It's already been over an hour here. And I hope this episode helps you. I hope it blesses you in some way. And I know those early days, again, are so hard. Maybe they're hard for you now and you're not in the early days. Motherhood is such a journey. So much learning, so much refining, so many mistakes, and so much blessings, like so much change. And you're doing amazing. Seriously, hear me say that. You are doing absolutely amazing. You've got this. I hope this episode blessed you. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to connect and talk with you. Let me know your takeaways. If we had these similar experiences, all of that. I'm just at Elizabeth McCravey on Instagram. And yeah, if you missed the birth story episode, go back and listen to that one. And let me know if you want to hear more on this topic. I'm happy to do another episode on it. Probably won't be over an hour next time, hopefully. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this. And I'll be back next time with another episode, probably business related on the next one. All right, bye for now. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast and all the way until the end. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to encourage you to check out my website where you'll find tons of resources to help you grow a profitable and sustainable business. Over on ElizabethMcCravey.com, you'll find free workbooks to help you figure out things like the best headline for your sales page. There's a freebie with my favorite journal prompts to start your day with, a guide on website essentials for all you coaches, and so much more. And you'll find my top business tools. Yes, I literally list out all the major ones for you on my website, and there are tons of special discounts and offers for you guys to snag as you try these products and services. You'll also find the main ways to work with me. First, through my Show It website template shop that helps you DIY your way to a strategic website for your business. These website templates are easy to use, they're gorgeously designed, and they have all the strategy I'm teaching on this podcast just woven into them, and I have a feeling you'll really love them. You'll also find my course and coaching program for designers, Booked Out Designer. In this program, I teach you everything I did to build an in-demand design business so that you can create a thriving business for yourself as a brand or website designer. So if all of that interests you, go to ElizabethMcCravey.com. To access those tools and free downloads, head to the tools page at ElizabethMcCravey.com/tools. And to see the different ways to work with me, simply click over to the Ways to Work Together page. I hope you have so much fun exploring everything over there. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And leaving a rating and review for the show, sharing it with a friend, sharing it on social media are all great ways for you to support this podcast. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again next week.